Today, I want to talk about Prince Andrew and the Epstein files. And the reason why is because recently he has found himself in some hot water. Not only has he been completely stripped of his title, but it seems like he's actually going to prison and facing some sort of repercussions. Although I am very heartened and I'll even dare say enthused to hear that at least someone is facing some sort of consequences for their involvement in the Epstein files, I think it may be a little bit disappointing the reasons that he is facing these consequences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at a video that outlines exactly why this is happening and what consequences he is facing, and then provide my thoughts on that as well. Hi there, pardon the interruption. I just wanted to make a real quick ask that if you are watching my content and you appreciate it, if you could please drop me a subscription. As you can see, through the life of my channel, 95% of the people that watch my content are not subscribed. So if you are watching and you find yourself enjoying the content, I would ask that you drop a subscription. Just, again, a really quick PSA, it would mean a lot to me. It really does help my channel grow, and it allows me to make this something that I can do for a living. So just wanted to take a real quick interruption, and I'll return you back to my video. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy.
Prince Andrew has been arrested because of the Epstein files. He got stripped of his title, and now the king is saying, let me state clearly, the law must take its course. I have learned with the deepest concerns the news about Andrew and the suspicion of misconduct in public office. Now, if you're like me, you'd think that misconduct is related to women and the accusations that have been levied against the prince. But that is not the case. It's actually about the leaking of private information while serving as the UK's special representative for international trade and investment. This is because it was discovered that the Duke would sometimes forward information to Jeffrey Epstein that was obviously sensitive, like this, Helmand high-value commercial properties for foreign investment, or this, a trip report for Vietnam, Singapore, Hong Kong, Shenzhen. Obviously, the
Yes, exactly what he's saying. So basically, he tipped off Jeffrey Epstein for when he could go take advantage of some of the chaos that he would sow. And there were a lot of problems with this. Number one, that, okay, what are the incentives for these actions, right? Is to go in and actually sow more chaos and create more of these events that just completely screw, it basically would not be in the best interest of England. So it is very concerning, first off, that yes, exactly as he's saying here, that he is tipping him off on these sorts of things, and the negative incentive would be that, okay, he's going to effectuate more of them to happen. And the other thing that I would point out, just to, not gloss over it, is yes, I would have hoped that it was with underage women, because then I think that sets the tone more broadly for other places to say, yes, this is not appropriate as well. But the problem with that is that I think that could cause a further distrust, because I think it's kind of like a PR campaign, right? Where they're saying, okay, he stands accountable for the negative things that he has done to the UK, right? So he has to answer for those issues, but we don't want to confirm that he did what he did with underage girls, because then that would possibly, and this is just speculation, right? This is just me thinking about, okay, what are things that could possibly happen around with it, right? Because if you're thinking about England and you're thinking about the amount of upset that there has been about immigration and grooming gangs and all these sorts of things that have been happening in England, well, if you find out that the ruling class is confirmed to be participating in these sorts of things, well, then you may cause way more civil unrest and upheaval to happen, and it won't just be a forcing out of Prince, no longer Prince Andrew, of Andrew. It won't just be forcing him out, but they're coming for everyone, because this is completely unacceptable. So if it looks like, okay, the person who was mentioned in here is being held accountable without confirming that he did actually participate in the worst of the worst things, well, then it's a way to quell the civil unrest that undoubtedly will arise out of these things, his mentions in the Epstein files, and to still go after him for something that is truly, I guess I'll say, disturbing and in the country's worst interests, if you'll call it that, right? Not in the country's interests whatsoever. Because, again, these things that he has done that have been explicitly called out in the Epstein files are essentially treasonous, more or less. So, yes, that is something where he still needs to be held account for what he has done, and he's still able to, right? They can put on a show, they can say this is unacceptable, but without acknowledging that he has done inappropriate acts with minors.
Former Prince Andrew would have access to insider information or confidential information as part of his role, and forwarding that to a financial trading file is probably not a great idea. This is also deeply concerning because it blows a hole in Prince Andrew's big lies where he said he cut off Jeffrey Epstein in the late 2010s, because this is right about the time that he's engaging him once again in all of his contact. So for him to previously had said, oh yeah, I found out he was a bad guy and I cut him off, I had to travel to visit him to cut him off. Suddenly that doesn't hold water when emails come out where you're sharing possible state secrets with this guy. Here, Andrew, the former Duke, is.
And the other thing that I would say about that as well is not just that, yes, okay, he is sharing the secrets, but it shows the depth of the relationship as well. Why would you be sharing such highly classified information with this guy if you had completely cut off ties with him? Like, that is the thing, and that's what's so damning about this, is that it's not just that, yeah, okay, you didn't cut off ties with him, you still had a relationship, but you're sharing secrets of your nation, nation state secrets with Jeffrey Epstein. And it's like, okay, for what reason? And that's what's so damning about it, and what makes him look so bad is it doesn't just completely shoot his narrative in the foot, but it shows that the type of information that he's sharing is also something that you wouldn't share with someone who you cut off ties with, or who we're not close with, and we're expecting to gain something from them in exchange for this information. And that's the thing too, is, okay, were you taking advantage of these situations that England was facing or was aware of? Were you cashing in on that? Were you making money on it? Were you using the backs of hardships that your nation were facing to enrich yourself? So yes, all things to consider when you're talking about why this is now being brought to light and he's having to face some sort of consequences for his actions.
Sending a message to Jeffrey Epstein asking, I am checking, but as this is a U.S. institution, do you know of anyone who might take a look? Talking about a company called Aria Petroleum, which was sent to him, which says the company needs a $200 million working capital line due to significantly increased business from U.S. DOD. So Andrew would have had access to all this deal flow, all these things, and it looks like, at least in some instances, he would actually seek possible investment from Jeffrey Epstein for some of these companies. I want to call back your mind to this interview because it's so important to realize how this guy has lied to our faces for years before we address the bigger elephant in the room.
He was released in July. Within months, by December of 2010, you went to stay with him at his New York mansion. Why? Why were you staying with a convicted sex offender?
Right. Now, I went there with the sole purpose of saying to him that because he had been convicted, it was inappropriate for us to be seen together. I felt that doing it over the telephone was the chicken's way of doing it. I had to go.
So you stayed with him. And here's the thing that's just, like, any sort of scrutiny whatsoever should just completely shoot this narrative in, like, destroy it. Because if you were to think about, like, why wouldn't you just stay at a hotel, like a very nice hotel, and then you can still meet him in person. You don't have to call him, although you should probably just call him because the optics of this are very bad. But yeah, you don't stay at his place. You stay at a hotel. You can meet him for dinner or lunch or coffee or whatever and tell him, hey, we're done. That's obviously, as CoffeeZilla rightfully pointed out, that's obviously a bold-faced lie. Like, that's complete BS. You know what happened. I know what happened. He stayed there. He had pizza and grape soda, probably. Like, he did inappropriate things to little girls, and that is why he stayed with Jeffrey Epstein. There is no other explanation for it, and I just, like, how do you not, as Andrew here, how do you not realize that this just seems completely insane as an explanation? Like, there is no credibility to this whatsoever, and who does he think is buying this? I mean, I guess it's the only explanation he could come up with, but, like, it is so bad. And quite obviously, it's completely indefensible.
And see him and talk to him.
Well, there you have it. Prince Andrew says he had to go see and tell Epstein personally that, oh, we can't be friends anymore because you're convicted. I can't do that for you. And this is late in December 2010, where he says he went to cut off Jeffrey Epstein because he now knew that he's a convicted. But again, if you look at the dates of all these deals being passed along to Epstein, all these messages being passed along, it's right around the 2010, specifically December 2010 line, where supposedly he had one thing in mind, and that was to cut off Jeffrey Epstein. Actually, he might have been passing along state secrets. Now, obviously, a formal investigation by the UK police is going to commence, but that's what this arrest appears to be about so far: misconduct in public office, his responsibilities to the people of the UK at the time, and how these emails could have affected that. But it's this larger context of Andrew lying about his association with Epstein that I want to bring to the front of this next conversation, because obviously Prince Andrew's biggest problem with the Epstein files isn't necessarily the confidential information he shared. It's obviously the allegations made against him, specifically by a woman named Virginia Giuffre, who was captured in an image with Prince Andrew at the time when she was a young lady, and then later she alleged to have been trafficked to Prince Andrew and that they had together. Andrew was asked about this in an interview and famously denied it. Not only denied it, but said it all couldn't have happened because he didn't sweat at the time.
She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating, and that she went on to have bath, possibly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat. Or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was, yes, I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at, and I simply, it was almost impossible for me to sweat.
Well, there's enough.
That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because there is a physical reaction. Like, yes, okay, it may be hard for him to, in a circumstance where it's high pressure, right, because of an adrenaline overload or whatever. Okay, yes, that may have put things in a different perspective where stress, right, everyday stress or whatever, like that kind of stuff would not cause him to trigger a response in his brain where he sweats. But if I put you in a sauna, you're gonna sweat. Like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, if you go on a hard run, you're gonna sweat. Like, you can't not sweat. It's literally a biological reaction to circumstances. Like, yes, you may not sweat because you're stressed out about something, right? Because that could, if your adrenaline gets going, and yes, there could be some sort of reaction in there. So yes, there could be something like some physiological effect that is not occurring. But again, if I throw you in a sauna, if you go for a hard run, if you do any sort of, your heart rate, if you're dancing in a hot room, you're gonna sweat. And so that's where it is a complete joke. And you see how he stumbles over it, where he has to think about it on the spot. And he's like, how do I explain this away? But it just makes absolutely no sense. Because physiologically, you're still going to sweat if you are exposed to certain circumstances, including dancing in a hot room.
Another monster whopper from the former Prince Andrew, because of course he claims, I couldn't have been there because she describes me as sweating, and it's impossible for me to sweat. But of course, some photos emerged where Prince Andrew appears to be sweating like a pig. But of course, all of this is the lead up to the bigger denial, right? It's not about whether he...
And the other thing too about his claims that are just hilarious to me is, think about, he's saying, oh yeah, I used to have this, but now I can sweat again. Like, if his claim was factual, the only way I would believe him is if he could still prove that he doesn't sweat today. Like, today. If he could go run, a 5-minute mile and there was not a single drop of sweat, I'd be like, all right, man. Like, yes, this seems like an insane claim, but like, you can prove it to me now. But the fact that he's saying, oh yeah, it was some sort of malady that I had at this point in time, and I just couldn't sweat then. Like, come on, man. Come on. How stupid do you think we are? Like, get out of here. This is just completely false, and there's no one should believe what he's saying here. It makes absolutely no sense. And yeah, it just, again, ridiculous.
He sweats or not. It's about his word versus Virginia Giuffre's.
You can say categorically that you don't recall meeting Virginia Roberts, dining with her,
Yep.
dancing with her at Tramp, or
Yep.
going on to have sex with her
Yes.
in a bedroom in a house in Belgravia.
I can absolutely categorically tell you it never happened.
It never happened. And I want to say Virginia Roberts was her maiden name. Giuffre was her later name. That's why they referred to her as Roberts there. But what's so interesting about what the Epstein files have revealed, remember that we were told it's a big nothing burger, nothing's going to come out of this. But nearly all of Prince Andrew's lies in this interview have been discovered now that we have contemporaneous communication, such as this communication between Jeffrey Epstein and a guy named Thomas Landon. Now, Landon formerly worked for the New York Times until 2019. Thomas Landon says here, I think the big issue is separating yourself from Andrew. I mean, in the end, he had consensual sex with Virginia Roberts, and Virginia Roberts worked for you. The rest is atmospherics. Now, this is a huge allegation because Thomas Landon is basically admitting, yeah, of course, Virginia Roberts had sex with Prince Andrew. And of course, she worked for you. So this is a tacit admission back in 2015, I mean, way early on, that the substance of the story of them actually having sex is true. But the prince basically said,
and the same thing I say for all the Epstein files is, the thing to keep in mind is this is thought to be private communications between two people. So you need to give way more credibility to, yes, this probably happened. So like when you're thinking about these things and you're going, oh, well, it could have just been, you try and explain it away however you want. It's not realistic. Like, you need to actually think about, they didn't think that these emails were ever going to see the light of day. So when he is telling him this and he thinks it's in his own best interest, like, there's some credibility that you have to give to that, yeah, of course, this is probably what actually happened. So yeah, that just completely destroys all credibility that he had about, oh yeah, I didn't do this. This wasn't me. I didn't sweat. I never had any relations with her. Like, no. This is literally being admitted to in an email that was supposed to be private, that they never thought would see the light of day, that is one of millions and millions and millions. So yeah, again, this is just not adding up, in my opinion.
Says it never happened at all. And so I don't really know how credible that is. He's basically lied through his teeth this entire time about his ability to sweat, meeting her at all. There's a photo of it. And then, of course, having sex with her. Internally, they're like, yeah, of course that happened. And that's just the Virginia Giuffre part. That's to say nothing of the lies about cutting off Epstein in 2010, when it appears that the exact opposite happened and that he was passing along key information from his role as this trade envoy. I should also mention that this has been a closely examined story for a long time. Andrew Lowney released a book exploring his friendship with Epstein and his relationships, alleging a lot of damaging things related to Andrew's personal life. The book alleges that while staying in Thailand, more than 40 women were brought to his hotel room. Hotel staff were used to foreigners bringing in girls, but amazed that more than 10 a day were going to Andrew's room, Lowney writes. The book also alleges that compromising material on Andrew may have been passed to Israel's Mossad Secret Service. So it isn't as if this is Andrew's first time getting in trouble, but the Epstein files have...
Of course it was. Because, also, this came out recently, Israel had installed a bunch of cameras in the Epstein penthouse and probably around the island and everywhere else. Like, there's literally receipts for it. And so, again, this is not a surprise. If you have watched any of my content on this, I think that his connection to Mossad is all but a foregone conclusion. Like, of course, obviously. But then, yeah, like, of course, there's cameras. They have all the dirt on this. Like, even if the ones that they didn't install, because the explanation for it was that, oh, because Ehud Barak was visiting the penthouse, that the Mossad said they had to install cameras so that they could, because he was the prime minister of Israel at the time, so that they could monitor and just make sure for security purposes that he was safe. It's like, yeah, okay, that's not actually what the reasoning was. It's because Jeffrey Epstein was probably tied to Mossad at the very least and was passing off information to them. But yeah, so of course Mossad has, and Israel at large has information that would be damning to Andrew, to say the least. So yeah, this is, again, not surprising at all. And once again, tying it into another story that came out recently, that they had installed cameras in Jeffrey Epstein's properties, at least in New York, but probably in his other ones as well.
Confirmed a lot of what has been whispered about or suspected for a long time about his improper handling of his relationship with Epstein, of his position in the 2010s. We also discovered in the files the DOJ actually approached Prince Andrew about information regarding someone named Peter Nygaard, who was, quote, believed to have trafficked minor and adult victims. According to the UK Telegraph, the Duke is understood to have stayed at Mr. Nygaard's mansion with his ex-wife in June 2000. Later, that same guy was convicted on assaults of 4 women, ranging in age from 16 to 28 at the time of offenses. So Andrew has been embroiled in controversy for a while. This may just be the first thing that he's actually stuck with, is this charge of inappropriate leaking of confidential information. I don't know. I am pleased, I guess, on the one hand, to see that something has come from all of this. But sadly, it's just kind of this, I don't want to say lesser charge, but it really does feel like with everything that has been alleged against Prince Andrew, this is probably the lowest thing he could be in trouble for. But then again, on the bright side, based on photos that came from Reuters after Prince Andrew's arrest, it does look like he's learning to sweat again.
All right, and that was basically what I wanted to cover. As I said at the onset, yes, it is exactly echoed by CoffeeZilla. It is kind of disappointing and shocking that, yeah, they're not going after him for the other things that were alleged in the Epstein files or proven to be true, right? With the photos that, yes, he knew Virginia Giuffre, and yes, he was able to sweat, and all these things that he basically lied to everyone about. But I mean, at least it's something, right? And there have been other instances where there are starting to be some people who are facing some consequences. Is it as much as they should be, right? I would say absolutely not. But at least it's something, and hopefully it continues to, because here's the one positive that I will say about it, is that if all of us in the United States are seeing other people having to be held accountable for what they've done, I hope that that then forces people in the United States that are implicated to have to face some sort of accountability as well. Because as of right now, I have not seen anything where anyone has had to force any sort of, I mean, there's been some where it's like, oh yeah, people have stepped down from positions, but like, you were doing possibly the most heinous things that I could ever imagine, and like no, like you need to go to prison. You need to whatever it is. There needs to be some sort of actual accountability, not just stepping down in shame. Like that's not enough. That's not enough for me. That shouldn't be enough for you. People are just not outraged enough about this, and it's quite frankly insane to me. But wanted to cover it because, once again, at least we need to continue the conversation, continue, bringing Epstein spotlight as much as possible, show that there are people who are actually facing at least some consequences, but then also demand additional accountability. But if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.